Okay, we now come to our penultimate session. May I call on Mr. Sharad Sharma, who is our moderator for the next session, and the final session before we wrap up. A very interesting one, because I'm sure a lot of you have a lot of views on the technology solutions for women's safety. So that's our moderator, Mr. Sharad Sharma. May I call Mr. Chandrasekhar, a joint CP Crime Bengaluru. Welcome. Toby Simon, who will talk to us about his solution in Synergia Foundation. We have Anand Subramaniam from Ola Cabs. I'm sure a lot of bells are ringing there. Director of Marketing Communications and spokesperson. And finally, Shri Manu, who has a full-time job, but a part-time app developer and really committed to women's security and safety. A round of applause for our, thank you.
You and your lunch, and so we're going to keep it as crisp as possible. We had a little bit of a format planned out, but frankly, after hearing the Durga thing, I want to flip that over a little bit. We were going to talk about prevention and then how to respond to situation, but if my panel is with me, then we will flip this over, because I think what Priya showed us that even in a private setting, when there is a problem that creeps up, at that time it is very important for the woman to respond. And we wanted to talk a little bit about technology that can be used to handle a similar situation when it happens in a public setting, right? And what can we do to take all the people who have taken the Durga pledge and harness them together to become a force of social change? And so that is possibly, if it is okay, we will start with that. Anand, I know you are the most, Shri, you're most passionate about this concept of using technology to create some kind of a network. Would you spend a few minutes describing it, and then we can go around? Yeah. Right.
So hi everyone. The technology which we are talking about is very basic. Let's say, in the real life example, I'll try to give this scenario. Let's say, in one of the panelists, one of the guests here is having a cardiac arrest. Now, what would be the first response which we'll have? Is there any doctor here? So maybe 3 or 4 hands will go up, and they might help us. That is the first response which we require. Now, why not bring that to a technology-based solution? In the sense, like, whenever a person, especially a woman, is in distress, so most of us will have a smartphone nowadays, so everyone has moved to smartphones. And you would have seen a lot of panic button apps where you press a button and then the distress message goes on to your friends, family, and police, and those kind of sorts. So we will take it one step further. Now, we need to bring in a crowdsourced technology to address this safety. Now, what do I mean by crowdsource? It's like when we need to have a volunteer based who are in the neighborhood. Those volunteers will be, law-abiding citizens who are associated with the law agencies. Now, as soon as you press a button, it goes on, checks your geolocation, identifies any volunteers who are in the surrounding neighborhood, let's say 500 meters, 1 kilometer. They will be the first responders who will come and help you out until the law comes and the police or the ambulance and those kind of people come and actually take care of you. Till that point in time, you will be the first ones who will go and help the victim. So this is the simple crowd-based technology we were talking about.
So, Toby, this kind of a network that we're talking about, creating a group of first responders, either they'll become very inactive or they'll turn into vigilante group. How do we design something like this? The technology part, in my view, is simpler than the network design that we need to do to figure out how to create a system so that we have the right people recruited, they get some training. Is it easy or even feasible to do? What are your thoughts on that?
My best guess is that technology must be used first as a deterrent and then build around it the whole idea of being the first responder. Because if you see the genesis of technology right from the time the first atom bomb was done, it was built on the premise that it was a deterrent. It was never used except in the first, in the end of the Second World War. But entire during the, if you look at the Cold War, I mean, you had both the countries, both the blocs amassing huge amounts of weapons, but they never used it because it was a zero-sum game. Now, when you build, and if you look at the principles of any security doctrine, I mean, anything that you build on, I think it basically works around 4 or 5 things. That it must secure communication. The second is we must be able to identify the threat really quick. Third, we must have use of very intelligent sensors. Here we speak about human intelligence and, let's say, signal intelligence. Fourth, it must have the capability of data and video analysis. Fifth, it must be able to compile data and also be aggregated. And finally, you have to have accurate forensics. I mean, any solution that you are able to build with these paradigms, works as a deterrent. And I think deterrence is the best thing because if you look at intervention in the case of instances like in women's security or anything that is linked to human security, there is a considerable amount of collateral damage. I mean, be it to the lady, be it, I mean, you look at any threat, if it's a cyber, whether the lady, I mean, it's best not to go there. So I would strongly focus and encourage that we work on building a deterrence rather than trying to look at intervention, because intervention, it sometimes might be too late.
Mr. Chandrasekhar, what are your thoughts on building this kind of a volunteer network? Do you think it's in the realm of feasibility? Can we learn from what's happened in other parts of the world?
Regarding the network that you are talking about, it will be good to have a network of volunteers and who can respond fast. Of course, whatever is the threat or whatever is the incident, it should be communicated in real time to that particular group. Technology is one part of it, but the persons, how you select your volunteers, who are the people who are to be alerted, that is an important question, because it may, unless proper checks and balances are not put in place, it may lead to vigilante action and other incidents also. So the concept as such is very good, because usually the police response has been good but sometimes found wanting. Maybe such a network will certainly be of help, but we should have built-in checks and balances in order to ensure that it does not degenerate. The system does not lead to something else. So this is what I feel regarding this. Once the checks and balances are there in the system, certainly yes, and every action should be reviewed. If at all this network comes into being, network of volunteers, or it has to be reviewed, every action, and because it should not lead to something else.
Anand, in some sense, you built a commercial network, not a volunteer network of drivers, right, who can be hailed whenever you want. In this case, we are talking about Durga pledge takers being hailed when somebody is in trouble, right, in a system. So I want you to comment both on the technical aspects of it. Can this be done, and also the human aspects of this? What do you think is the...
Right, so you rightly put it. I think we are a mix of the technology and the human interface, right? Technology is what helps us scale. In fact, any business in the current scenario scale, but there's always a very strong human element to it. And I think that's where we have to look at it more from the prevention perspective, which is where we take a lot of our listening and belief from. So a bunch of things that, not just us, but as an industry, we recommend happen are one at the personal level itself, right? So every driver going out there is probably an entrepreneur. That makes him a better person, not just a salaried driver, but someone who's actually running his own livelihood with an asset, right? So that's stage one. 2, training and sensitizing him, which is where I think it makes a lot of difference to help him understand, what's in it for him, how does he grow as an individual, how does he change his socioeconomic status, and how the overall customer experience in terms of safety and reliability is important for him to grow as an individual. So you show him that direct relation. 3, put in preventive measures, which include, say, an in-cab GPS, ensure that every driver is screened, not just a police verification, but a third-party verification, So we do a run through of the National Criminal Bureau check. We do background checks, antecedents check, and all of that, right? And all of those have been initiated by a lot of organizations, not just cab aggregators, but also corporate fleet owners. Three, do a run through across defaulters, right? So can we have multiple aggregators or multiple players coming together, publishing a blacklist, right, saying these are drivers who've been reported to have had problems, bad feedback coming in from customers, and ensure that they are not part of any network. So these are things that happen on the preventive front. Once we have done all of these and all of these are in place, that's where I think first action comes in. So a simple SOS button, right, or a connection to the nearest control room. I think all of these would be step one. But like Toby pointed out, I think ensuring that it doesn't happen in the first place, putting all of those frameworks in place to ensure that there is no occurrence in the first place can be a far superior way to look at it.
Yeah, Shri, go ahead.
No, I mean, as Toby was mentioning, the prevention part, right? I mean, in the Western countries, there are for the repeat offenders, they track repeat offenders closely. Now, why can't we? I mean, I'm just putting out this question to the commissioner here.
And also to all of us.
Yeah, all of us. I mean, why can't we have a system in place where the repeat offenders in our surroundings can be tracked closely, either by the law enforcement agencies or some association or the third party things? I mean, this will enable the citizens to be aware of repeat offenders in the locality. Isn't that possible, Commissioner?
I'll take this question. Yeah, it's a very good point that Shri has raised. We have a system, the police has a system of tracking and keeping surveillance on repeat offenders. But to what extent should we go to keep track is the question. In foreign countries, in internationally, in most of the advanced nations, repeat sex offenders are being tracked electronically also. They're tagged electronically. Maybe a chip implant is done, and for a particular time period. That too, if he is released before trial, if he is released, and in many cases, people are released before trial in our country also. And but our system of surveillance has been either a manual surveillance or surveillance based on some other thing. We have not gone to the extent of implanting chips or putting radio collars. Maybe it's a good idea, but it needs some change in laws and rules, and the drive has to come from the civil society to do that. And that will certainly tell us where the threat is. Number one, when you have a problem, you should know where the threat is. So that you can either localize and ensure that the threat does not become a real problem.
Toby, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, just a quick one on what Shri mentioned and what Mr. Chandrasekhar mentioned on the preventive part of this. In the typical crime scenario, there have been rules. I'm sure Chandrasekhar knows this section, where you can be booked if you're a repeated offender under something called the Gunda Act, which means that you will be tagged. You will have to go to the police station for the first time and sign an undertaking. And if you do it the second time, you will have to bring in a surety. And in the last, I believe, 1 year or about 8 months, they have booked about 10,000 such people. Now, again, if you remember what the commissioner said in the morning, it is these small crimes that people do that become bigger and bigger. So the moment you start putting sensors on the ground to spot these people who do small, I don't know, probably if you watch the gentleman, the Bhatkal brother, when we were following him a few years ago, the first crime he did was to steal a bicycle. That's what he did first. And we met also the police officer who arrested him the first time. So it's these small crimes, and if you have the right sensors on the ground, you are able to do. And then it is easy, as you said, to build the backend on open source intelligence, on facial recognition tool, that if you pick up somebody, it's quite easy to know what he has done anywhere in the world. And that goes to the fact that you said cloud. You put it up there, you can know what he has done anywhere.
So this broken window theory of crime prevention, which has been successful in the US cities at all. Do you think that has applicability? And technology has a role to play in kind of catching these small infractions, which are very hard to do in our system today because it's overwhelmed today, right? But there's not, we haven't invested enough in the system right now. So is technology a way for us to overcome that? Much the same way we are talking about, dealing with teacher shortage by using technology, or in some cases by healthcare, leapfrogging the shortage of doctors in rural areas by using technology more aggressively. Do you see a similar kind of opportunity before us in doing that with small infractions that you're talking about?
Yeah, this is a very valid point. As Madam from the Durga Association, she was also mentioning, it starts with small things, staring, then the eve teasing, then groping, then it becomes something else. And it is certainly a graduation. It is applicable to any other crime, and it is applicable to the crime against women also. And where you have huge numbers, technology really gives the focus, where to focus and how. And even for the traffic, and we have also computerized our systems, and it is not that difficult nowadays to find a repeat offender. And the repeat offender, he can be for eve teasing, he can be a repeat offender. We call it we book him under the Karnataka Police Act. Then if we can do that, and of course we are trying to club those things and ensure that we get to know if some fellow gets booked for more than 2 times in these type of offences, then we will put a rowdy sheet. Rowdy sheet means he's supposed to be monitored by the local police station fellows. What is he going? Where is he standing? Is he standing at a place at that ladies' college and he's trying to do some nonsense out there? So that type of checks and balances have to be done. Of course, we are at a very nascent stage. It has to be properly technology, because the population is so huge. You have around 6 crore population in the state, and you have to keep focusing, and you have to make subgroups and ensure that we focus on the right people. Technology will certainly give us that edge, because we cannot infinitely keep increasing the number of the police force also. So technology, by way of technology, we can certainly do this.
So I know we are really running behind time, but I'd like to open for a couple of questions. Chitra says we can take 2. I see a hand going up. Yeah, you're standing. If somebody could get a mic to her. And the second question, you raised your hand, so you are next. And I'm afraid we can only take 2.
My question is for Mr. Commissioner. We have heard a lot of speakers say that when they are talking about safety about women, that anybody living after 8 p.m., we ensure that there's a security who's going as an escort. A lot of emphasis is placed on the private security here. Now, I want to know that what is the background check that the police does when the security agency approaches the police? And are our police stations networked to know that a person has committed a crime in, say, Whitefield police station? Is it when the background check comes to the Whitefield police station, are they going to check with the Electronic City police station also whether he has committed a crime there, or is it only for that particular area? Why I want to ask, I just want to give a small incident about this, which has happened with our company, that there was a person who was kind of sexually harassing the ladies passing through a particular ladies' hostel area, and thanks to the Whitefield police station and our own associates, he was caught. And the horrifying fact for us was that he told that he is working as a security in some other company. So that is what scares us, that what is the background check which is done for such kind of people?
Madam, we have a network. It is the crimes which are registered in all the police stations in Karnataka, and with some of the states, they are all in digital format. It is stored and it is accessible to every police station. For example, a police station of the Kaban Park police station will get to know if Falana, some Ram Kumar is involved in some offense. Then you can do a check and you can find out what are the offenses he is involved in other police stations also. Even nationally we can get some type of data. But sometimes the data that is available in some other states, and it may not be properly updated. That particular problem is there. And in some issues, we have found that you get security guards from some other part of India, some other state, and we do this check, and they are supposed to get this check done through the police. We don't find anything, but later we get to know that he is involved in some offense in some particular state. So the system is in place. The data has to be properly updated. We have a national network. We have the crime criminal tracking network system which is in place. But sometimes because of these issues like not updating the data properly, we have this problem. But as far as Karnataka is concerned, if he is involved in some crime somewhere, we will certainly get that report. We'll get that on our record. And these security firms, there is a particular act for them as per which they have this antecedent verification is a must. But some of them, they try to cut corners and they don't do it. They hire people and then they face some other enforcement related issues.
Yeah, just adding to that, some time back, I think the IG, Mr. Bhaskar Rao, IG Internal Security had started as a controller of Pasara. He had started a registration of all the private security agency guards. But when we approach our private security agencies that, have you registered? They say that we have registered, but the system is not yet up and running. Now here is a case where the technology is available, but it is not being, maybe, I wouldn't know what is the latest.
And I like to say, this is a role where civic society has an important role to play to help build these public good software platforms that are free to use. We live in the world of open source, and I'm so happy to see Shri here because he's a living example of working somewhere during the day, but on his own time, building solutions that are free for the government to use. And I think we need to do more of that, because even in our commercial life, we are using Linux, we are using Wikipedia, which have been built like this. And that obligation is as much on us as civic society as it is, because the moment we leave it to commercial interests, they are only interested in billing them very, very highly and give them very shoddy systems. So I think there is a growing movement in Bangalore to build public goods, software public goods through the open source model. And I am very confident that they will actually start addressing some of these gaps that we see in the system. But let's go to the next question and then...
I'm Sudhiti. I think my question should come before that question. So this from Mr. Anand. So something like this happens. Some driver does this, and there's ICC, and you terminate the employment. Do you go beyond that, reporting it to the police? If this report doesn't happen, then the data won't be there, and the next cab, Meru cab, has no way to check on that driver.
Absolutely. So I'll just take a step behind. So every ride has a feedback option, and that's something that we take very seriously. So it is not just Ola as a representative. So I'm talking about the industry overall. There are measures to take feedback, and we welcome them. And every ride has a feedback, and that has a driver feedback as well. And like you rightly pointed out, any instance that has been reported, we have worked with the customer to go back and report it. There again, the question lies, what happens to the driver after that, right? That's not the end of it either. And that's where, the recent move on, Taxi for Sure joining hands with us has also one effect to this, to the same line, essentially saying, here are two networks that will now not have a driver, which has been reported on either of them, right? And I think it's about bringing a consortium in the larger sense, working with the police, working with the state authorities, saying these are the open lists of blacklisted drivers, right, who will never be used by any organized aggregator or any organized city taxi service again, right? I think that's where the future is. But yes, we've crossed that one step of saying we work with the customer in ensuring that every case that is reportable or needs reporting is done along with the customer, right, which will include an FIR or whatever sense of reporting is necessary there.
Thank you. Is there... Oh.
I think
one more question. Literally 30 seconds.
Yeah,
30
I'll
seconds.
try to stick to 30 seconds. I'm Priya from Durga. What we've done in Durga is, because we are a citizens initiative and we realized that we shouldn't keep going back to governance bodies with problems, and we thought we'll come up with a solution. And what we've done, as I'm speaking, we've piloted with BMTC, and we have 5 buses with the Durga alarms running on them, which is basically a very simple technology with switches in multiple places in the front half of the bus, where women normally are. And if a woman feels threatened or violated or harassed or abused, or a child for that matter, will only have to raise her finger if she's not able to raise her voice, press the button, and the driver knows from which switch the issue has arisen. And it is, again, I'm coming back to the point of being a citizen's body, so the bystanders there and the driver and the conductor have a very active role to play there. There's an alarm, so there's a loud noise within and outside the bus. So it triggers off this conscience of people that somebody is being harassed or abused, and it's collective responsibility of citizens to be able to address that. And we're happy to say that it's been there on the roads for 1 month. We're trying it out for another 2 months. And
Okay.
thank you. The idea was to create awareness, because that's something that has to be done parallelly, that people should know that systems like this do exist. They are very simple. You don't need an internet. You don't need anything. You don't need a mobile or an Android. You just get
Okay.
into a bus which has this.
Thank you, Priya.
So I just want to end on that note. I think this is so uplifting. See, in the US, they reduced the child kidnapping dramatically with a very simple idea called Amber Alerts. And they just announce it on radio. It comes up on the billboards, and it's been phenomenally effective. So I think the role of technology, where I like to end, is there is good in society. There's of course evil in society, but there's a lot of good in society. And what technology does, with simple technology today, we are in a golden moment, because everybody has a phone. We are connected in a way that we were never connected. We are at a golden moment to harness, to aggregate this good, and to eliminate these kind of problems that we are having. And that will change social behavior more than any, court decisions that may happen. Those are important in their own way. But what happens on the ground will have a bigger impact longer term. So thank you so much for bearing with us.
No,
thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you to my panelists here. Thank you, Shri, Anand, Toby, and Mr. Chandrasekhar.
Thank you all the panel members. That was, I think, a useful session which we wouldn't have missed even for our hungry stomach. Okay, and again, to the point being made, it takes all of us. And that's what I want to say. That's our theme. Keep our eyes open, a billion eyes. It takes all of us. Thank you once again. A round of applause to the panel members. And as we bring this to a close, I just want, let's have Mr. Sudesh Venkatesh share just one slide to say what's our call to action. We sat through, very patiently listened to all the experts, to a lot of views. Let's just take away this little call to action. Sudesh, over to you.